When you were the national chairman of the JDL, did most members accept you as the national chairman, or did many people recognize Fern Sidman or Irv Rubin as the national chairman? On Wikipedia, it says Fern Sidman was the national chairwoman from 1980 to 1984, and Irv Rubin was the national chairman from 1985 to 2002. It doesn't mention you, unquote. Well, the reason for that, Moshe, and you can change it, is because anybody can write on Wikipedia anything they want to write. Obviously, someone wrote that who supports that revisionist history, that lie, and it is a complete lie. I was the national chairman of the organization from 1984 to 1987. I mean, that's a fact. Now, Irv Rubin, when he claimed he was national chairman, only one chapter supported him, the Los Angeles chapter. He did not have the support of any of the other chapters. I had the support of every other chapter in the country. Boston, where Ken Sidman, Zichrono Livracha, was the chairman. Philadelphia, Chicago, Miami, Erwin Block in Miami. I had a program on the Florida JDL bought me radio time for 1 hour every week in Florida. Florida JDL, outside of New York, Florida JDL was the second biggest chapter in the country. They bought me an hour on WBSS radio, which is a major rock station in South Florida, and I was on the radio every single week for 1 hour in South Florida. New York obviously was the biggest chapter. You have more Jews in New York than anywhere else, and New York. In New York, we had chapters in Long Island, Queens, Brooklyn. They all supported me. Irv Rubin didn't have any supporters in New York. He didn't have any supporters anywhere outside of Los Angeles, except for Fern Sidman. And she, So, by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if Fern Sidman herself wrote this on Wikipedia. I wouldn't be surprised. But anyway, you can correct this, Moshe. You can sign up with Wikipedia and correct it and put in the Chaim Ben Pesach was the chairman from 1984 to 1987, and put in what I did for Soviet Jewry. And tell me one thing that Fern Sidman or Irv Rubin did. Tell me one thing they did to make JDL an organization, to make JDL famous. The bombings I did, the tear gassing at Lincoln Center, those were very famous events. Those were gigantic events that really made JDL the world famous organization that it is. The tear gassing at Lincoln Center was the most famous event that anybody ever carried out for Soviet Jewry in the whole history of the Soviet Jewry movement. No event got more publicity than that event. When we injured the Soviet ambassador in Washington, the Soviet ambassador the Soviet ambassador to the United States from Washington came up to see the Moseyev Ballet on September 2nd, 1986. We injured the Soviet ambassador in that incident. He was overcome by the tear gas. And the Soviet ambassador to the United Nations, their second ambassador in America, the Soviet ambassador to the United Nations, was also overcome by the tear gas because they refused to leave when the FBI told them everybody has to leave now. A tear gas canister, a military tear gas canister has been released. You all have to get out. The two Soviet ambassadors refused to leave. 50 Soviet diplomats and the leading ballet performers of Russia refused to leave. All 50 were overcome by tear gas, passed out, and had to be taken to the hospital and stayed in the hospital overnight. They were hospitalized. They were injured. They passed out. They were injured. They were hospitalized overnight. I mean, this was a huge incident. You never had anything else like this in the history of JDL. And it's no coincidence that a mere few months after this incident, all of a sudden the Soviets announce that they're going to let all the Jews out of Russia, that they're going to start releasing everybody. Within 1 year of that incident, they started releasing everybody. I mean, what, that's a coincidence? Obviously not. Obviously, Soviet-American relations were gravely jeopardized by this incident, and the Soviets saw that as they now begin a transformation, the Soviet Empire was falling already, and as they begin this transformation, that one thing that they're going to have to do is allow free immigration of the Jews. They didn't allow, by the way, many other freedoms. Many other freedoms they refused to allow. To this day, they don't allow them. And they didn't allow them when Boris Yeltsin took over from Gorbachev. They didn't allow it then either in the 1990s. But free immigration they allowed because they saw that was one issue that they had no choice but to allow it, because JDL put the world spotlight on that issue, and it had to be decided favorably toward the Jews. Otherwise they were never going to get the the good relationship with the United States that they needed during a time when the Soviet Empire was collapsing. And in the 1980s, it was collapsing. If not for what we did, they would have refused to let the Jews out. They would have said, "Jew, what are you talking about? Jews don't want to leave. What are you talking about?" And they would have kept the Jews hostage there, and nobody would have even known that the issue exists. Without us, nobody paid attention to the issue. Nobody would have known the issue exists. There were articles on page 17 of some little Jewish newspaper. That was the type of attention that was paid to the issue. Nobody paid attention to the issue. That is what would have happened to Soviet Jewry, God forbid. So, it's obvious who did what. Who made JDL famous? Who freed Soviet Jewry? Who changed Jewish history? Who were the leaders that led and that made JDL what it is? Now, I've told you some of the things that we did when I was running JDL. The tear gassing, the bombings, some of the things that I did. Okay. That obviously were big events. I mean, when you blow up Soviet diplomats' cars, when you blow up the entrance door to Lincoln Center on October 20th, 1986, when the Moscow State Orchestra comes to play, and you blow up the door and firebomb the door so that the whole side entrance and the wall and the white wall of Lincoln Center is all black and charred. I mean, obviously that's big news and got tremendous television play and radio play all over the world. I mean, those are the type of things that we did. Now tell me what Fern Sidman and Irv Rubin did. What did they do? Where were they in all of this? The only time they really got attention was condemning me. That was the only time they got attention, was condemning me. Fern Sidman didn't, I don't know if Fern Sidman condemned me. I mean, she didn't do anything. She took a paycheck. She was taking a paycheck, which I never took. She was taking a paycheck. She didn't do anything. She did nothing. And Irv Rubin, Irv Rubin spent all his time condemning me and calling me a terrorist while all of this was happening, and of course, stabbing Jonathan Pollard in the back. So, Moshe, without putting all of these details in, because you won't get all of them in, they won't allow you to put all these details in, but, you can correct who was the national chairman and so on and so forth, and you can put incidents like what happened at Lincoln Center and these other incidents. You can put that in the article. You can write it in the article. Anybody can. Anyway, thank you very much, Moshe. And again, every chapter, to answer your question, every chapter in the United States except for the crazy Los Angeles chapter that Irv formed, where he had intermarried, assimilated, self-hating Jewish leftists in his chapter, who supported Jesse Jackson and supported blacks and supported Jew haters. That's what he had in his chapter. Running after Hollywood Jews and begging Hollywood Jews to support us. That was Irv Rubin's disgusting so-called Los Angeles chapter. But aside from that one chapter, every chapter and of course we voted him out of the JDL, so he wasn't really in the JDL at all. But every chapter of the real JDL in the United States, all of the chapters supported me. It's a fact.